it's not really in the culture to make sure that the people as individuals within the group can match the character they're being given to play. The individual idol does not recognize who the public sees, and the feedback they get, either most often through online comments or these kind of things, does not reflect what they feel inside. This is not something which is taken into account by the companies. So this is something that we look at very seriously, because what we want is to preserve the psychological integrity of our artists. This is very important.
Guys, what's up? It has been a while. We're very fortunate to have the CFO and co-founder of SG Entertainment, Thomas Sommer, on the channel today. SG Entertainment is a human-focused production agency for idols, performers, and creators with a strong focus on creativity and the expression of individual emotions. Thomas, how's it going?
I'm doing good. The jet lag is really okay now. I find it really much easier in this direction from Europe to Korea than it is from Korea to Europe. Because I can easily get up in the morning and fight the weariness in the morning. It's much easier that way.
Yeah, man. So SG has been active since 2018. How did it all come about?
First of all, it's the story about my relationship with my co-founder, Junhei. So we've known each other for a very long time. We've known each other for over 20 years. We met when we were around 12 years of age back in France, back in our hometown in Strasbourg, France. And Junhei has always been kind of oriented towards people and arts and community building. That was always been his thing. And for me, I went into much more of a kind of classic education. Went to study political science. After that, I went to study business at a business school. Worked in banking, worked in tech as well. So I don't have, personally, my experience is not in entertainment or music or production at all. But Junhei, on the other hand, he was always into that. So first of all, because of his family, like his father was in opera, or he's still in opera, director of the opera in Strasbourg, and he's kind of got a very, very artistic family background. So he didn't go to business school or anything like that. He kind of went straight into work, working at doing various things, gigs in music and production, such as stage direction, doing production, doing music composition, working on the music for documentaries. Also, he created his own labels, his first labels in France already, with independent artists, up and coming independent artists. So that was his thing, kind of finding talent and growing it, fostering it, finding the early seeds, the people who have the potential, the people who have he's very good at that, at recognizing, looking at a seed, okay, and this is going to become a very big tree someday, and knowing how to foster it, which angles to look at in order to make it grow. So what happened is that we were together back when we were very young, and then we kind of drifted in different directions, but always kind of kept in touch. And about 4 to 5 years ago, he came back to me saying, "Hey, I've got this idea." And the story is, yes, exactly. And the story is, he is French like me, so he grew up in France, but he was born in Korea. He was adopted.
Okay.
He was adopted early when he was very young, and he got interested in Kpop early 2010, 2011. So there was Big Bang. It was kind of the beginning of the internationalization of Kpop, or at least let's say the westernization of Kpop. It's very big in Asia,
right?
But 2012, around that point. And the reason, like, there was young people that were interested in him, what he was doing, only because he was looking Korean. And he very early at that stage, he kind of got into the fandom communities of K-pop, kind of organizing them, fostering them, animating them. There were lots of within the in France at least, or a little bit around France in Europe, in the early 2010, 2012, and up to 2015. It was a lot of the Korean people who Korean origins who were into that, because it was a way for them to to kind of put forward their original culture, their original country, and be proud of it. And from there were other people, not necessarily of Korean origin, or just people who enjoyed K-pop or the Korean culture, that joined these communities and made them grow through virality and through word of mouth, and through this very passionate activism, I could say, of this K-pop fandom communities that were extremely active, passionate, and motivated up to, I mean, not up to, but it went on crescendo from there up to 2015, 2016, and then there was BTS, of course, which was kind of the culmination of all of that. And if BTS managed to be so successful in Europe, for instance, it's because those communities were already present to support them. So to come back to Junhei, he tried to understand why the young people not from our generation, but more of kind of the younger young people. So I'm 36 years old, so just to think, so people were likely more in their early teens to 25 back then, or 20s. Why they were interested about Korean culture? Because Korea was not a big power. It was not it was not a country that was everywhere in culture or anything like that. It kind of grew more organically at that time. Try to understand what was it about Korea, and we can get into those reasons later if you want, that made them so passionate about this culture. And coming back to the idea, he came to me in around 2017 and said, I was working back in tech at the time, and I was looking for something a bit different, with more focus on values, I would say. And he said, look, there is an opportunity to go to Korea and create an entertainment company around K-pop that would also embody other values, Western values as well, around creativity. That was the main point, saying K-pop is great, but in order to make it more sustainable, we need to bring in those values, those long-term values around creativity, creation, using your own emotions in order to produce the content. Why? Because this is the way that artists in the West grow organically. They use their own personal backstory. They use their own emotions and suffering in order to connect with the audience and grow with them. This is how Western artists manage to have careers that span over decades. Look at Bob Dylan. Look at Rolling Stones. Look at Ed Sheeran today, or Lady Gaga. They're still there. They still have their fan base because they have grown together and they have managed to adapt to them and grow together. Even though they became rich and famous, they can still through their emotions and through retaining that close link, emotional bond and bond of trust, which is actually maybe the most important word here, to keep this fan base motivated and active. This was the original idea: go to Korea and merge two concepts: the Korean concept of K-pop, of training and production, with the Western concept of creativity and artists.
And so now we're here in 2021, and that's it's just been a progress from 2018 to 21.
It's been exactly
been making since 2012, back in France.
Yeah, it's the idea that started in 2012. Exactly, it's almost 10 years.
Amazing, man! What a story! What a story! So I guess the first thing I'd like to know as well, judging with how far you guys have come in quite a while now, but in the last kind of 3 years, you've had a few rookie groups, but the one that I'd love to ask you about is your current trainee group, Alpha Ray. Is there much going on with them? How are they actually going through with SG at the moment?
Yes, we are currently developing it's at this stage the concept of Alpha Ray, which is going to come out in a couple of years. This is a concept that we have refined a lot through experience. Also some setbacks, of course, because creating a company in Korea as foreigners is not easy. So this is something we will get into, but there's been a lot of learnings. As you know, with the Korean training system, you have auditions. So you go out there and you hold auditions in order for people with talent to come and to showcase what their talent is. So this is how we started to select the trainees, to find them first of all, then to select them, and later to train them. I think that's the most important thing when it comes to our system is that we kind of look at the physical attributes, such as, or the competencies such as dancing, singing, but we don't think this is the most important. At least this is not sufficient. It's not enough. So in our view, and this is where we come back to the idea that we also need to foster creativity and foster the capacities of the idols to have that bond of trust with the audience, is to look at trainees, so young people who have the potential to become artists or idols, who can then foster and develop that relationship with the audience and have the capacities to attract and retain their audience by themselves as well. And not just through the group or through the concept or through the company, but by themselves have the capacity to appeal to their audience and develop that bond for the long term.
Is that the Western ideology coming into it? Because it's a lot more, I think with Asia in general, it's a lot more about we and a team, whereas the West, it's more I and the individual. But it sounds like you're kind of crossing both worlds together. Instead of all the members, it's actually the individual member working to the bigger picture.
Yes, absolutely. So I mentioned a bit earlier that there were reasons that we think that K-pop was, or Korean culture is popular in the West. And I think one of these reasons is that Koreans, through their culture, their philosophy, managed to live together harmoniously. Like, meaning if you look at K-pop groups, there's not one of them that puts themselves forward compared to the others. They're always as a group. They always think themselves as part of the group, never as an individual, never. And this example of harmonious living and togetherness is something that the West today is, or at least the young people in the West, but I believe not necessarily only the young people, but a lot of people are looking for. We have a lot of issues, as everyone is aware today, about the economic situation, the pandemic, the fear about the future, and it seems that there's the fabric of society is kind of getting ripped at times, and we, especially in Western Europe, we have these issues about society, about how can we live together, how can we just find the common values, the common understanding in order to cohabit peacefully and thrive and build society together. And this is the example that the Korean culture gives through the K-pop, through K-dramas, through all the Hallyu content, is people who manage to, or by their culture, put their pride on the shelf, act as part of the group in order to for the group to thrive as a whole. This is, I think, what was one of the main elements of success for K-pop in the West. Now, this is something that we want to keep, of course, because this is, as I said, one of the core features of it. But at the same time, the problem is that by putting the group forward so much, it happens a lot that the individuals within the group forget themselves and don't manage to create a sustainable identity for themselves outside of the group. What we want to do is keep that group identity, but also develop the individual identities within them to a certain extent, of course, because there are different cultures and it's not something that we can change radically. But for instance, I can give that example. For us, it's very important that the character, the persona that is played by the individual member of the group matches their personality and who they are for real, like who they are as a person, and that they're not just given a role to play because it fits the concept of the group and it just fits their physical appearance, which tends to be more the case in K-pop. Not talking about BTS, of course, because they're a little bit special, but for a lot of K-pop groups, what the way that the groups are created is through concepts, that trends, marketing trends, these kind of things. So you look at what's working in the currently in the music industry in the United States, etc., and from there you can assemble things and build a concept. It's not really in the culture to make sure that the people as individuals within the group can match the character they're being given to play. Yeah. And unfortunately, that has some psychological consequences, or can have in certain cases, because the individual idol does not recognize who the public sees. and the feedback they get, either most often through online comments or these kind of things, does not reflect what they feel inside. This is not something which is taken into account by the companies, because it's just not in the culture to do it. So this is something that we look at very seriously, because what we want is to preserve the psychological integrity of our artists. This is very important.
So something I saw actually regarding people getting on and cooperating and being a team is that you are quite big advocates of implementing the Myers-Briggs tests into SG Entertainment and personality types. How is this effective? Is it working? Are you finding good results with this?
So first of all, yes, the Myers-Briggs test indicator of MBTI is one of the tools we use in order to assess the personality of our trainees, but also of our employees, of ourselves, of every person we basically work with. The Koreans, they love MBTI, but they'll just look at it's kind of a superficial way, tend to use a superficial. What are your letters? Yeah, exactly. What are your letters? This means if you're ENTP or ENFP, this means that you're that. No, that's not at all how we're using it. First of all, what's important to know is the MBTI is an American invention, so to say, but it's based on the work of the Swiss psychologist Carl Gustav Jung. His concepts served for the basis of the content of much of BTS's work. There is actually one American researcher, I forgot his name, he wrote a book about the relationship between the work of Carl Gustav Jung and BTS. I think it's called The Map of the Soul. I forgot the name of the guy, but I'm pretty sure the name is Map of the Soul. Absolutely. So it's based on research. It's based on, it has some solid intellectual foundation. It's not scientific in a way that some people might want to see it, but I believe that we believe it in our company, that it is a tool that has a purpose, that it has a purpose. It's not definitive. It's just something that you can use in order to orientate yourself, look at things in a certain way rather than others, and etc. So what's important to understand about MBTI beyond just the 4 letters or the 16 types is that it's based on cognitive functions. So cognitive functions are what you use in order to make sense of reality and to make decisions. So, for instance, do you prefer to take decisions based on neutral, objective facts, or rather on your own subjective feelings? This is something that it is clear that people have different ways of making decisions, and MBTI is just one way to map that. So, for instance, some people will be more intuitive than others, and will like to understand things more globally than others, etc. There are multiple ways to understand things. And yes, for instance, when we compose the group or we compose the teams, we look at what their MBTI type is to see if what kind of structure would suit them best, what they would most like to work on, etc. But it's important when we assess a person from a psychological point of view, either for being a trainee or to work with, or even for personal relationships, a partner, spouse, friend, etc., is that there's what constitutes an individuality is very complex. And as I said, it's just a tool. There are other things that you can look at. So, for instance, personal history, how you grew up, how your parents were. These are things that are very important. In order to understand why you made the decision, the decisions in your life the way you did, why you went for a certain job, why you went for a certain career, why you went to study a certain things at the university or didn't go to university, these kind of things. So we look at a person from a very holistic, integral kind of way, and we don't reduce them to 4 letters. This is something that's very important to say.
It's almost like star signs, isn't it? It's almost like saying, oh, that person's a Leo, so they're like this. And this person's a Pisces, so they're like that. And it's just not, I don't know, as you said, it's so much more complicated and deep for any sort of person and personality. We kind of touched on it already, but I wanted to go into more detail with you about the company general ideology. So when I jumped on, your website, there was a sentence that just really kind of caught me and struck out. So I'm just going to read it for people at home. And you have on the website, to become the world's first institution for leaders, creators, and visionaries. And then just shortly after that, it says SG Entertainment is a human-focused production agency for idols, performers, and creators with a strong focus on creativity and the expression of individual emotions. Was there any sort of more detail we can go into this?
The whole kind of idea comes from kind of a statement or kind of a observation about the state of the world right now. This is also some of what drove us to, just take our things and move from France to Korea and leave everything behind in order to embark on that journey. Is because we're talking to people, we're looking at the world, we're looking at we're talking especially to young people, and we see that there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of uncertainty about the future, and there's a lot of people who don't know what tomorrow will be made of, and are afraid to take their life in their own hands because of that, because they just don't know what direction to go. They don't understand the purpose of their lives. They don't understand where the world is going in a way. And we think that we all have today have kind of an obligation to ask ourselves questions as to, well, first of all, why it is like this, but beyond why it is like this, what any of us can do, what is the responsibility of each of us in the situation today, and what we can do to improve it. So I will make that segue. I mean, I will talk about BTS for a second now, because we also believe that BTS was especially successful because they talked about concepts. First of all, in the West, they talked about concepts that resonated a lot with people such as, the soul, the individuality, persona. What is a person? What are you made of? But also, what they did is they through their songs, they told people that to love themselves, to accept themselves, that they could, that whatever happens, they deserve love, and they deserve understanding, and they deserve to understand their place in the world. And this is great. This is something that they managed to do, and they really deserve the success that they have today, because they went in very genuinely. I know it for sure. It was not acted. It was not a marketing stunt or anything like this. They went genuinely with their own selves and talked about that. So I think that's amazing. And what we're trying to do is work on that, build from that basis of, okay, you know that you have a place in the world, and you need to accept yourself. Accept that you have this existence, that you have this life, and that you can do something of it. But then we think that, yes, it's great to accept yourself, but then you need to understand yourself in order to build something for the future, and to take your lives, as I said earlier, take your lives in your own hands, and look at and understand what you can do to improve not only your own life, but also the lives of the people around you. And this is only that way that we can start building we can start building a better world in a way. We start building a better world, at least a little better world around ourselves.
So generally, when you set out with SG, did you notice any sort of glaring issues that you found in the K-pop industry, and how did you set out to solve those issues and problems?
I can talk about the K-pop industry first, which in Korea, as you know, is a very well established, very well oiled system that produces idols and produces songs on a very large scale. First of all, one thing that we saw is, from a marketing point of view, or from a business point of view, is that the reason that we say that we're human focused is not only for the human reasons or for humane reasons, it's also for business reasons. Because when you, as a business, produce people, your assets are human people, are human beings, they're people. So taking care of the people is what is going to make them sustainable and make them profitable sustainably in the long term. So understanding the people, making sure that they are okay psychologically, that they are, that what they do fits who they are, is for us is a business argument as well as much as a human argument. This is the first thing. So what we looked at K-pop, and of course BTS being kind of an exception, we saw that, as I was saying earlier, a lot of times these are concepts that are created from a marketing standpoint and then applied onto people to form those groups, and then those groups last for it depends, but maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and then they disband and they just do other things, or they come into some issues. Some idols have had, and it's not secret, a lot of psychological issues that come from the feedback they get from the audience, for instance, and they get psychological personality disorders like depression, bipolarity, because they don't understand who they are. All the way to, unfortunately, and I have to say, some suicides, as some news headlines have shown it. So this is unfortunate, but this is also why we wanted to bring in that psychological aspect and human aspect into the production. Then we also looked at the state of the Western music market and our entertainment industry in general. And the observation we made was that, unfortunately, from our point of view, what is the messaging? What is it that they're trying to pass on to their audience, to the young people that listen to them? I'm going to be very adamant about this. When I see that, for instance, the first the first songs last year or this year for the US, no, last year for the US was WAP. I'm authorized to ask questions about what have we done to the values and to things. I can give another example. It's the movies. We used to have movies with lessons in them, with kind of a morality. Okay, morality is not saying you shouldn't do this or shouldn't do that. It's like, okay, these are situations. Here's how they solve them. Here are the tools, the ways that people solve these situations in order to bring about a better outcome. And then you can garner something for yourself, for your own life as well. I'm thinking, for instance, about Star Trek: The Next Generation, which I love. Every episode has kind of a little lesson at the end, kind of a way, something to learn from. And if you look at the newer Star Trek films, it's mainly action, and this is also is true for all the Avenger movies. And it's basically just according to me, it doesn't have that kind of a moral or material that people can get some help from, or some. I mean, this is something that we want to change. Basically, we want to get back to morality. And I say this morality not as I said earlier, not as kind of we are the arbiters of morality, but more like these are the situations, for instance, that our trainees face. Here are the situations that idols face. What do they do in order to overcome these situations on a human level? How do they work together as a team? And how do they use their own emotions, their own experience, their own wisdom in order to overcome these situations? And then people can get something from that. I think this is hugely important.
And this is what you try and implement into SG, and this is why you're seeing the holes in certain K-pop industry stuff that you're trying to do differently and solve these problems.
It's not only that we want to give answers directly, it's more like we want to give people or our audience the tools in order to solve their own problems. We don't want to solve it for them, even though I'm not that old, I'm 36. But I believe that my generation's purpose is to build the platform, to build the tools, and to make the changes so that the next generation, the Generation Z and even the younger ones, are going to base themselves from in order to build that new world.
Awesome. Thomas, thank you so much for joining us on the channel today. It's been really eye-opening, some of the stuff that you guys are doing at SG. It's amazing. And for everyone at home, I'll add all Thomas's links to the description box below. Thomas, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.